Hey YouTube, Tweak here, bringing you all my Yu-Gi-Oh! Gem Knight deck profile for Genesys format for October 2025. The Genesys format, for those of you that don't know, is a point implementation system for a new format for Yu-Gi-Oh! Where you can play with a set number of points per Yu-Gi-Oh! Deck, depending on the types of cards you run. What I like is we finally have Block Dragon back in usage for the Gem Knight deck. It's a very strong card for the deck overall, just being able to have some very good rock search support for the deck. So with it, we have the new added support, and then being able to make use of Block Dragon in the deck for our Gem Knight monsters. And it takes up a good amount of the point system in the deck, so there are some cards we had to mix around number-wise to use in the deck. Also, some of them can be changed if you want to reduce the number of Block Dragon, but we'll go over that when we get started with the deck profile. So we'll go ahead and start off with the main deck monsters. For the Gem Knights, we're running 3 copies of Gem Knight Neprim. If this card's normal or special summon, you can add 1 Gem Knight card from your deck to your hand, except for Neprim. Also, any effect damage your opponent takes during the main phase this turn is halved, and during your main phase, if this card is sent from the hand, deck, or graveyard, you can send 1 card from your hand to the graveyard to special summon this card, giving you that resource back onto the field to then use for some of your other Gem Knight plays, and then still having the search even if you special summon Neprim off of its own effect. We're also running the 3 copies of Gem Knight Quartz. There are actually no main deck Gem Knight monsters that are on the Genesys list currently. The big things on the list are obviously Block Dragon, Brilliant Fusion, and then Gem Knight Master Diamond, which we are not running Master Diamond in the deck. Its points just conflicted with the usage of Block Dragon in the deck. We do have the new Gem Knight Master Diamond Dispersion, but in total, with the points for Brilliant Fusion and then the added points for Block Dragon, we're at 99 points total for the deck. So I think the only way really you could run Master Diamond is if you just drop down the number of Block Dragon or Brilliant Fusion, you take it out. But Brilliant Fusion just helps with a lot of our plays that we want to use for the summon. So we have to stick with what I believe we wanted to use in number of combos for the deck altogether. Gem Knight Quartz, if your opponent controls a monster, you can discard this card to set a fusion continuous spell directly from your deck. You cannot special them from the X deck for the rest of this turn except Gem Knight monsters. And if this card uses a material for a fusion and sent to the graveyard or banished, you can add 1 Gem Knight monster from your graveyard to your hand except for Quartz, which, as I said, Quartz can help to set up either Brilliant Fusion or Scatter Fusion. Scatter Fusion restricts you from using the rock fusions, but Brilliant Fusion does not. So then you have that added play to rely on thanks to this card. We're back to running 3 copies of Gem Knight Obsidian. It just helps with consistency to keep monsters on the field. When it's sent from the hand to your graveyard, you can target a level 4 lower normal monster in your graveyard and special summon it, with our normal monster being our Gem Knight Tourmaline. So then you can have just all of these different targets. If you use Obsidian for the fusion play, Tourmaline can be summoned back onto the field. And I chose Tourmaline just for the use with our fusions in the extra deck, including being able to make Prism Aura, and then also having a target because we are running fusion deployment in the main deck as well, being able to reveal our Topaz to then be able to summon this card out from the deck and then just be restricted to fusion plays. But with Genesys format, we don't have, obviously, link monsters, so we have to rely fully on the fusion plays that we can do in this deck. Also 3 copies of Gem Knight Lazuli, so we have more consistent add back power of Gem Knight monsters from our graveyard to our hand. And then also the 2 copies of Gem Knight Hollow Core. You can send 1 Gem Knight normal monster or 1 Gem Knight Fusion from your deck to the graveyard to special summon this card from your hand in defense. And when your opponent activates a card or effect while you control a Gem Knight Fusion monster, quick effect, you can banish 3 Gem Knight cards from your graveyard, including this card, to negate that effect. And all Gem Knight monsters you currently control gain 1,000 attack. So having a effect negation along with the setup of Gem Knight Fusion in the graveyard or one of our normal monsters, giving you this other bigger monster on the field to then also use for the fusion plays. Regardless or not if we can make link monsters, just having Gem Knight monsters to make our fusions is a big part of the deck altogether, with our other monsters being Gem Armadillo, which, once again, our Gem Knight link monster not being able to be used anymore. We're restricted for what we can use for our monsters for summon, but Gem Knight Master Dispersion just needs gem monsters, so we can still use Gem Armadillo for the fusion summon of that monster as well. And then the 1 1 Crystal Rose and the 1 Brilliant Rose for more monster setup and special summoning and name copying that both of these different monsters can provide. The 2 copies of the Shaddoll monsters, which I'm still running the Shaddoll engine in the deck. It just helps for consistency with more fusion plays and being able to use some of our other Gem Knight cards like the Earth monsters or the Light monsters to then be able to summon out our given Shaddoll monsters. And then the card of the deck that I was most excited to play was Block Dragon. This card is at 33 points currently on the Genesys list, so we have to run 2. If we ran the max, we'd be at 99, and then we wouldn't be able to run our Brilliant Fusion, which is also a 33-point card in the deck. So we're at 99 points total with these cards in the deck. So we have to rely on 2. It cannot be normal summon or set, must be special summoned from your hand or graveyard by banishing 3 Earth monsters from your hand and or graveyard, and cannot be special summoned by other ways. Rock type monsters you control cannot be destroyed except by battle. And if this card is sent from the field to the graveyard, you can add up to 3 rock type monsters from your deck to your hand, whose total levels equal 8. So the search for the rock monsters is very useful because you can add Gem Armadillo, Gem Knight Lazuli, and then Obsidian just off of the send of Block Dragon, which the main way once you summon this card out would be to then use it for a fusion play to get out Gem Knight Zirconia, needing a rock type monster and a Gem Knight monster, and then you just have that +3 search of additional Gem Knight monsters to use from there also. And then for the spells, 3 copies of Gem Knight Fusion. Just more consistency. Once again, we can't rely on link plays, so we have to go for the fusion plays. So just having our main go-to fusion card along with our next one, which is Gem Knight Dispersion, for the added fusion play, and then being able to use those resources from the deck as well if they're non-rock type Gem Knight monsters, and then being able to add a Gem Knight monster from our deck or banishment to our hand as well for this activating one of these cards, but you can only activate each once per turn. So you can activate both if you have both Gem Knight Dispersions, but then having these added searches gives us more and more reliability for cards we may want to add off of the deck as well for us to use. The 1 Brilliant Fusion and the 1 Scatter Fusion for the continuous spell fusion search off of both to use. Brilliant Fusion especially can just help with our fusion play of a Gem Knight monster and help to set up Block Dragon in the graveyard as well to then special summon back out again. The 3 copies of Shaddoll Fusion to use for the main deck resource to send for our fusion plays, with the last of these spells and the rest of the cards in the main deck being 3 copies of Fusion Deployment, revealing a fusion monster in our extra deck, with this deck being the Topaz to then summon out that monster. And then we cannot special summon from the extra deck except for fusion monsters, but really not a big restriction. The majority of the extra deck for this deck is fusion monsters to begin with. And then for the extra deck, 1 Gem Knight Dispersion, 1 Lady Brilliant Diamond, 1 Seraphonite along with the 1 Lady Rose Diamond, the 1 Aquamarine along with the 1 Topaz and the 1 Ruby, which these 3 can be summoned off of Dispersion with its own card effect for the quick effect, sending this card from your field to the graveyard to special summon 3 non-rock Gem Knight monsters. The 2 copies of Prismora, which one of these I would like to make a second Zirconia. I just don't know where I put my second copy of this card. You want multiple rock answers with Zirconia for that play, so definitely recommend running 2 of this card in the deck, just so you can make the first fusion play for the Brilliant Fusion with the Block Dragon that you sent out, and then reuse it again on the field for a second Zirconia once Block Dragon's on the field to get your additional search as well, with the rest of the fusions being the Shakanaga and the El Shaddoll Construct for the Shaddoll fusions, and then the 1 Castel, the 1 Tornado Dragon, and the 1 Exciton Knight for the Xyz monsters that we can go into with some of the level 4s if need be also. And then as for some of the go-to plays in the deck, as mentioned before, with the added set for our monsters, we can use cards like Gem Knight Quartz to set up our 1-of count, being the Brilliant Fusion, activating this card to then give us our fusion play, using our needed monsters to do so, being our Gem Knight monster of choice, and then our additional send of the Block Dragon as well, which more Earth monsters we set up, the better, because then with these 2 monsters here, we have already set up the fusion play for 2 of those cards to then be able to use with the added summon of Zirconia on the field as well for that monster. Its attack and defense becomes 0, but unneeded because we then set up 1 additional monster for that summon as well, which then from here, if we have our normal summon play being Neperim, all the better. We can then use Neperim to search out our fusion spell, being Gem Knight Fusion, activating this to fuse the Zirconia and the Neperim into our go-to fairy monster in the deck, being our needed summon, which it can also be our Gem Knight Seraphonite for this play as well, for the summon there. And then we have the 3 earth monsters in the graveyard to banish off, to summon off the Block Dragon to the field, which then, if we have the additional monsters on the field for the play, it will leave the graveyard empty for that summon. So that's one thing to remember with this added fusion resource for your monsters. We'll have the Block Dragon on the field, but you'll be short the 1 monster to be able to add back the Gem Knight Fusion from your graveyard to the field to then reuse for the fusion play. That's where the additional cards like Gem Knight Dispersion come in handy as well for that summon. If you have the 2nd copy of Gem Knight Fusion, as mentioned before, you can use it to then fuse the Block Dragon and the Neperim, which we also have the Seraphonite on the field. So if you have the additional Gem Knight normal summon, you have that additional monster, like cards like Armadillo, to use as well for that fusion play, summoning the 2 out together to then get you your 2nd Zirconia Block Dragon, then being able to use its effect to add the 3 noted monsters from your deck to your hand as well, which then gives you the added resources with our other monsters in the graveyard as well. It's just one of my more fun plays in the deck. Very, very strong with the link aspect, but with the link aspect gone, I'd say just as balanced enough where they just had to add it for the point system for the deck to be able to use all together. But that is it for the deck profile. I hope you all enjoyed. Been having fun adjusting these decks for the points which I see fit to run in Genesys format. But as always, until next time, please don't forget to leave a like and subscribe, and Kira Twig out.